Hello and welcome to a special Sunderland Retrospective podcast from students at the University of Sunderland. Today we're taking a look back on the 2015-16 season, and I'm sure Sunderland fans remember that one really well. And speaking of, we've got two of them joining us here this evening. First being Aaron Morris. How are you, mate?
I'm not too bad. Harvey, how about yourself?
I'm doing really well, thank you very much. And we're joined by Cameron Abernethy as well, another Sunderland fan. How are you doing, mate?
I'm alright, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. And by James Noble, who's not a Sunderland fan, but we're happy to have him here anyway. How are you doing, mate?
Not bad at all. Yeah, looking forward to this.
Good. I'm joining James in not being a Sunderland fan, but we thought this would be a good idea to look back on, and we've got enough insight from the two Sunderland fans, and it'd be interesting for me and James to hear their perspective of it after just looking at it on black and white pages. So we'll not hesitate too much. We'll get straight into it, and if we cast our minds back to the summer of 2015, where I was finishing year 10 at school, I think, which is going to make Aaron feel... What were you doing in summer of 2015, Aaron?
2015. I was probably in between college and university, taking a year out and just living the dream, really, Harvey. Going out every week.
Another song.
Hopefully.
So if you cast your mind back to that time, we have a transfer window, because a summer is nothing without a transfer window, which we might actually see this year due to the you-know-what. And the number one at the charts at the time of this transfer window was, can anyone guess? I'll let you all guess what number one was in July, the start of July 2015. Cam, I'll come to you first.
I don't know, something by David Guetta.
All right, James.
Up, Ollie Murs, Demi Lovato.
Oh, very niche.
Ooh.
Go on, Aaron.
Lush Life by Zara Larsson.
Oh, that's a shout, to be fair.
That is a shout.
Actually, I've got it here. It is Not Letting Go, Tiny Temper, but featuring Jess Glynn. And I forgot that song existed until I looked it up for this podcast. Did not realise. And I'm going to ask you the same question for the end of the season as well. So if we go into the actual transfer window, Sunderland did a lot of their business late on, weirdly. But in terms of who they let go, El Hadji Bar went to Charlton for £500,000. Cam, your face has made me laugh. Have you got any fond memories of El Hadji Bar in a Sunderland shirt?
Nope.
All right, we'll move on. Anthony Revellier was released on a free. Any memory of him?
Not really, no. It's...
And the only other player to leave permanently for a fee was a quite significant one. Conor Wickham moved to Crystal Palace for £9 million, which, looking back, I know he had a decent run. He had a couple of really successful loan spells in the Championship, I remember, and then came back and scored a few goals. But at the time, Aaron, £9 million, were you surprised by that fee?
Oh, I was astounded, to be honest with you. I mean, he done bits for us, obviously, in the last season before that. Scored a couple of headers from what I remember. I'm sure he scored one against Crystal Palace, in fact. But 9 million, you know what I mean? It's the transfer market's just weird, and like you've got Ollie McBurney signing for the Blades for, what was it, 20 million?
20 million well spent, I think.
20 million. It was a good spend, but like, in what world is Ollie McBurney worth 20 million? You know what I mean? It's mad inflation these days, and money controls the game, which is sad. But Conor Wickham, 9 million. He was a big miss to us, I suppose.
And well, you loaned out 3 players as well. Virginie went out on loan to Getafe, and it will, of course, well, at least in my mind, as a neutral, it will always be remembered for the stunning own goal he scored in the big, it was 8-0 defeat to Southampton. And to be fair,
I'll say it for them.
What a strike! Like, if that's at the other end, then that's one of the goals of the season.
I still don't know how he managed to do that to this day. It just defied physics how that was possible.
Technique was impeccable, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Jordan Pickford went on a 6-month loan to Preston in the Championship, but as we'll see later, returned under Sam Allardyce, but got his first couple of games under Sam Allardyce for Sunderland. And probably the most interesting out of the players that left was Emmanuel Jacqueline, who went to Bologna on a season-long loan. And he's had a bit of an interesting career since. Cameron, what were your thoughts of Jacqueline in a Sunderland shirt?
My memory's not great for Sunderland, to be honest. I know it's not great to admit as a Sunderland fan, but I remember being on holiday with my parents, and I remember he scored, I think, was it 3-2 against Cardiff or something like that? Can you remember that, Aaron? I think he scored a goal against Cardiff. It was a relegation scratch season. Like I said, that's probably my only memory of Jacqueline, to be honest. He wasn't one of my favourite players.
I can't really remember a lot of our battles with Cardiff other than Michael Chopra playing against us and then playing for us against them, you know what I mean? Oh. But bit of a journeyman in winning, but less said about him the better, I suppose.
Yeah.
Jacqueline would end up going to Napoli, of course, and playing, and then he ended up quite key in, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but he played quite a big role in Italy's 2016 Euro campaign, which would be the summer after this season. He came on and scored a couple of goals, I remember. And I remember him actually standing out in that side as quite a good player. Yeah,
I'm sure there was a lot of stuff on social media about his market value going up, things like that.
Yeah, well, to look more positively of transfers in, you brought in before the season started, and I'm sure, well, we'll either see dollar signs forming in James's eyes here because you happily handed Liverpool £12 million in this January transfer window for 2 players. $2 million on Uruguayan centre-half Sebastian Coates, who's gone on to, again, have a really successful career since, doing really well at Sporting in Portugal. And on deadline day, you brought in Fabio Borini for $10 million for his second stint with the club. And it's what a player in his loan spell, but as we'll see, it didn't really work out too great in his permanent run. What did you think about when you heard about Borini leaving for $10 million? What were you thinking, James?
It was a strange one because he had good moments for us, and he was probably, I can't remember whether he was the first, but he'd have been one of the first signings under Brendan Rodgers. So it was just a case of it not really working out like long term from the Liverpool perspective. But I think we're probably quite pleased for him in certain ways, in that it felt like he was going somewhere where he'd had more success. Maybe even, I can't remember exactly. I think he always worked pretty hard for us, so he'd have probably been popular enough with the fans, but he was probably more popular with the Sunderland fans given what he'd already done in derbies and won that game for you at Chelsea as well, didn't he? And it just felt like he'd get more game time there, and it was probably sounds like a pretty good deal for all parties. Like maybe Sunderland didn't get value for money sort of in the end, but yeah, I think sort of happy enough given because I think the same time we'd have brought in Benteke, which looked like a decent buy at the time, and he didn't have a particularly bad season for us, but just didn't fit in, especially once Klopp had come. So yeah, so it felt like a decent deal all round, really.
Aaron, what were your thoughts of Fabio Borini in a Sunderland shirt?
Loved him, absolutely loved him. Like you said, when he materialised a permanent deal on Wayside, he didn't really live up to his potential, if you ask me. But his loan stints, all of the goals he scored against the Mags, won us a game at Chelsea by winning a penalty, you know what I mean, which out the door took off his hands, but it was still an important result for us. Best celebration in a Sunderland shirt over the past 10 years, I don't remember. Well, you know what I mean?
And we'll come to talk about when he used that celebration in a very big game late in this season. And it wasn't the only player he spent relatively big money on that window, with Jermaine Lens coming through the door for £8 million from Dynamo Kiev, who played quite a big role in this season, had a lot of key moments surrounding him. And the other paid arrival in the summer was Adam Matthews, the right back, coming in from Celtic for £2 million, taking your total spend for the window to £22 million. Coming through, leaving Stadium of Light, but £9.5 million coming back with those sales, giving you around a £12.5 million net spend, which is actually quite all right for a Premier. Even a few years ago, that's quite decent for a Premier League club, managing your money fairly well. And you'd bring, not till after the season started, but loan signings, Jan Via, Ola Toivonen and DeAndre Yedlin would be in the door before the end of September. Now, going into the first game of the season, you're away at Leicester at the King Power Stadium. Leicester the previous season had pulled off a great escape under Nigel Pearson, but due to an incident that I don't think we're prepared to discuss on this podcast,
yes.
Nigel Pearson was let go from his role as manager.
Wasn't his fault though.
No, but
we'll skip over it.
If we don't know what we're talking about, look it up. And he would be replaced by odds-on manager first to be sacked in the 2015-16 season, Claudio Ranieri, who brought his tinkering style that he got from his reputation at Chelsea to the Midlands to take over the Foxes. And Aaron, do you remember much going into this game? Did you feel confident? Were you wary? What were you thinking?
Well, I mean, I'm sure if you ask Cam the same question, he'll say the same answer, in which you're never really confident going into a game as a Sunderland fan. It could be Arsenal at home. It could be Plymouth away. You just didn't know what you're going to get. Obviously, I felt we should have been giving them a better game than we did, but obviously we didn't know what we did then. That their counter-attacking football, the pace that up front in Jamie Vardy and Riyad Mahrez, that N'Golo Kante, like world-class players when you skip forward to 2020. Obviously, but I think most of the nation underestimated Leicester that season, and a big part of that first game of the season. No one knew what to expect. 4-2, I think it was to them in the end.
Yeah, 4-2.
Great result, great result, or a great start of the season, but like I say, as a Sunderland fan, you can never underestimate a team, because you know a goal can be scored in a second by anyone.
I'm just going to read you out the starting 11 from that game, and the players substituted. So I just want to. So this is your default set 11 for the start of the season. So as a Sunderland fan with this squad, how are you feeling about the upcoming season? So you've got Costel Paltini. Nice if I can pronounce his name. Costel Pantilimon in goal. The big Romanian. Billy Jones at right back. Centre-back partnership of Sebastian Coates and Yunus Kabul. Patrick Van Arnholt at left back. Lee Catamol in holding midfield, with Sebastian Larson and Jack Rodwell just in front of him. You have Jermaine Lenz and Adam Johnson on the wings, and then Jermaine Defoe up front. And in that game, you made two changes, with Catamol coming off after just 30 minutes after a horrid first half an hour for Sunderland, it's fair to say. And I think Advocat looked to go a bit more positive. Didn't really work in the end, but Fletcher coming on after half an hour for Catamol did score in that game. So and Matthews came on for his debut after 54 minutes. But with that side, what are you thinking going into the season?
It's quite a mixed bag, really. We've got some very decent players. Like Defoe's obviously not in his peak, but he's still a decent striker. The defence, not fantastic. Obviously, Big Sam, as I'm sure we'll come into, made it a lot better. But I've probably look at Lee Catamol with quite rose-tinted specs, really. He was my hero growing up. Obviously, when I was younger, I just loved Lee Catamol. I always found a way to justify a bad performance from him.
Well, that's more than fair, I think. And after this game, 4-2 defeat, Defoe and Fletcher getting on the score sheet for Sunderland. Dick Advocat would come out in the press conference and say, we need more players, and which isn't an unfair thing to say after the game, because bear in mind in that time, you were still waiting on the arrivals of DeAndre Yedlin, Ola Toivonen, Fabio Barine, and Jan Via, who would join just a day after this game on loan from Rubin Kazan. And he would start in the next game, which, okay, Leicester away, they weren't great last season, but it looked like the makings of a good side. New manager bounce. You expect maybe away from home that a loss there, but it's followed by a much more worrying result, I'd imagine, for Sunderland fans, losing 3-1 at the first home game of the season to Norwich City. And in which, after conceding 4 goals, Dick Advocat stuck with the same back four, with 7 goals now conceded in the first 2 games. The changes made weren't wholesale. He sort of just reverted to what he did after half an hour in the Leicester game. He went 4-4-2, tried to be a bit more positive, started Fletcher. Fletcher started in place of Johnson, and Mvia came in central midfield in place of Rodwell. And it's looking at those first 2 games, 7 goals conceded. Even though it is really early doors, James, as a neutral, would you be looking at Sunderland and thinking, they might be in for the long haul this season?
Yeah, I think probably after the Norwich result, definitely. I can't remember that game at all, in truth. But it's but yeah, when you sort of see, obviously, as you say, like none of us really had an idea sort of what kind of how strong Leicester were and would be over the course of the season. So, in a sense, obviously, I think it was clear maybe they were going to be stronger, but obviously you're only going off sort of 1 or 2 games at that stage. And yeah, I think then when you're coming up against a promoted team, which Norwich were then, admittedly one that had only been a Premier League team about a year earlier. But yeah, when you're coming up against one of those teams who you want to put a mark down in a game like that and get your first 3 points on the board really, and then obviously you lose, sort of you're beginning to think, yeah, maybe we're going to be fighting it out with them for survival.
And could either of the Sunderland fans tell me who got on the score sheet for Sunderland that day?
Watmore. It was late on, I believe.
It was very late on.
89th, 90th minute, something like that.
Yeah, Duncan Watmore getting his first senior goal for Sunderland in that game after being 3-0 down, and the just Norwich wiping the floor with Sunderland really on the home turf, which I am at right now. And Dick Advocat after the game said something that, again, a neutral. It seems it might be me just saying this, seeing it as like I wouldn't want my manager to say this, but he says, you hoped we would have changed from pre-season. We haven't. We'll have to see how it goes. Like, for me, that if I was a Sunderland fan, that wouldn't really fill me with confidence. What would you think to that, Aaron?
Oh, hey. I mean, it's not exactly the worst thing we've ever heard come out of a manager's mouth, is it? You know, you've got David Moyes, who at the start of the season told us we were in for another relegation battle and that we had no chance of like finishing anywhere above the top half of the table, you know what I mean? But Advocat was at least being honest, you know what I mean? And it takes a certain sort of individual to not hide behind other people's faults and stuff like that and kind of own it. So, you know, big up to Advocat for it.
All right, and then a week later, Advocat would make a couple of changes, 3 changes in Sunderland getting their first point on the board of the season, a 1-1 draw against Swansea. And the 3 changes would be John O'Shea coming in at centre-half for Eunice Bull, Jack Rodwell coming into midfield for Seb Larson, and Danny Graham starting up front ahead of Stephen Fletcher. And in this game, from what I read on the BBC report, Costel Pantilimon was awarded man of the match. And I watched the highlights back, and yeah, I think Sunderland will have been very happy with a point from this game. Swansea had 61% of the ball, had 20 shots. And do you have any memories of this game at all, either Aaron or Cam? I'll let either of you take this one. Okay, I'll just go to Aaron.
He was a busy man, to say the least.
Yeah.
Pantilimon, you know, he was a hell of a shot stopper. Still is, I believe. Probably one of the best keepers we've had over the past 10 years. But Swansea kind of ran us off the pitch, to put it nicely.
And can either of you tell me who scored in that game?
I'll go Danny Graham.
Danny Graham. Aaron, have you got a shout?
I'd put money on that wasn't Danny Graham. If it's any consolation, but I haven't got a goal scorer now.
Jermaine Defoe.
Yeah.
Levelled after I think it was Batatimbi Gomez. Yeah, it was. Who put Swansea in front just before half-time. And then you go to get your first win of the season in the League Cup, a 6-3 win against Exeter. A very entertaining game, 3-3 at half-time. Defoe got a hat-trick in that game. Rodwell got on the score sheet twice, and Duncan Watmore also getting involved. So a good boost, I suppose, after a poor start to the league season. But you get back to league action that weekend and pick up your second point of the season away at Aston Villa.
Oh, yes.
So this was a really interesting game. You started off really, really quickly with Yann Villa getting his first for the club from a great free kick. But just minutes later, Lee Cattermole giving away. It's a definite penalty, but it's just you think there when you've got a lead away from home, you know it's going to be difficult, but he just runs into the back of the Villa forward, and Scott Sinclair puts away the penalty and gets himself another before half-time to make 2-1. But Jermaine Lens is on hand to get his first Sunderland goal and level. So it was the same side as put out against Swansea, and Dick Advocat said he was pleased with the point, and I suppose he would be, going behind away from home 2-1, coming back, and Ola Toivonen made his debut and got an assist. So a few new faces coming in there, and I think I want to focus on one in particular, and that being Yann Villa. Scored a free kick early in the game, and from all Sunderland fans I've spoken to, Cam, Yann Villa just seems to be regarded so highly amongst them.
There's not a word to describe him. He was truly incredible. It still breaks my heart to this day. No one didn't pay the money for him, because he was like Aaron said earlier. We probably still be in the Premier League if we had Yann Villa. He was absolutely phenomenal for us. And
how much did Ruben Kazan want for Yann Villa?
6 mil.
Yeah,
$6 million.
Yeah, it was less than we paid for Didier and Dong, which really gives you an insight into kind of how the club was behind closed doors then with recruitment and things like that. That we wouldn't pay 6 for Yann Villa, but was it 13 or 14 million or something like that for Ndong?
15 or 16.
Well,
but the thing
you
with
could have got two Yann Villas and you'd still have £3 million left over for what you paid for Didier and Dong.
The thing with Mvia is that he was out of contract 6 months after the January transfers window or something, so Sunderland basically wanted to get him to sign a pre-agreement, which never happened. I mean, he was at Newcastle Airport in January. He got a plane from Ruben Kazan to Sunderland to get the paper signed and stuff, and they just didn't answer the phone. Heartbreaking, to be fair.
Can you remember that Instagram post?
I can.
It was an Instagram post. It was something like, I called Sunderland and they haven't rang or answered, something like that, yeah.
I feel really sorry for him in that situation, because he was desperate to get that move over the line. And it just, like you said, Cam, I think it just really reflected what Sunderland was like as a club at the time. That they just weren't that willing to pull the trigger, and that cost them in the end. But a good point on the road at Aston Villa, nothing really to be ashamed of. Aston Villa, I don't think people knew how poor they'd be that season. But coming back from behind away from home, it's not a bad result. And after the international break, you would return on Super Sunday to face Spurs at home in a 1-0 defeat to Ryan Mason's late winner. And this would be the return of Fabio Borini into the side, his first game back since signing on deadline day of £10 million from Liverpool. And the changes in this game, Kabul came back in at centre-half for Coates, and Ola Toivonen had earned himself his first start. And from the looks of it, looking back at this game, actually played quite well. Oh, sorry, Jordi Gomez got his first appearance of the season as well, coming in for the Lee Cattermole. But looking back on this game, it seems quite an unfortunate one for Sunderland. Don't know if any of you have any memories of it.
I remember the goal. The goal wasn't from too far out. I think he beat a couple of defenders or something like that. Didn't he?
He got clattered when he scored.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah, he got clattered. Yeah, he came off injured or something, didn't he? Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I think we were quite unfortunate in the game. But it seems to be a common theme on Weir's side, where even if we play well, we all seem to be the team that comes out on the the end of misery, really.
Yeah, and I think maybe at this point, 5 games into the league season, 2 points only picked up. Yeah, he played Spurs at home, and Spurs would prove to be, even though they ended up finishing third, Leicester's closest challengers in this season.
Yeah.
But Dick Advocaat, you maybe feel starting to get a bit nervous after this one. 5 games and only 2 points collected.
Yeah, it's like I said, well, it's probably a common theme for Sunderland. Like I say again, really common theme for Sunderland managers. But I think Advocaat was definitely thinking, we didn't have a terrible squad. We weren't awful. So he's probably thinking, what's going on with his players? Really, trying to think of how he can change things.
His assessment of the game that they played well for 70 minutes, and then the last 20 they couldn't handle the speed of Tottenham's play. So I suppose you do expect the what are now known as the top 6, to have that extra gear in them against clubs that will end up fighting at the bottom of the table. But you'd go and try and bounce off from that next Saturday, but you would fall foul of newly promoted Bournemouth with current Newcastle player Matt Ritchie scoring possibly the goal of the season.
Oh,
what a strike!
That was a screamer, absolute screamer. Credit where it's due.
The top corner. I really enjoyed it as well. It was unbelievable strike in that game, and I think and again Bournemouth at this stage was sort of not known to what they are today, because they've been known now for a few years to play attractive football, to make it difficult for teams. And I think a lot of people, just because it was Bournemouth, sort of wrote them off at the start of the season. They were a really good side to watch this season, and they go on to be the likes of Chelsea and Manchester United as well this season. So it was a great strike in that game. And Kabul got himself sent off in this game, if you remember that. But I think it was a second bookable offence in the second half. So again, that doesn't help. But I remember Dick Advocaat. And I remember Sunderland fans, I've read about this game before, and they were very unimpressed with the first 45 minutes showing. And Dick Advocaat said, "You cannot do worse than that first half performance. I'm still sure we'll stay up, though." It wasn't wrong in the end.
No,
but...
it was wrong.
Yeah, it was wrong at the end. Yeah.
Look, Bournemouth, since they've been promoted from the Championship, they haven't been relegated, have they? You know what I mean? They've been a very consistent side. They haven't been the best side in the world, but they've been a very consistent side, and it just goes back to that whole underestimating squads and that. You know what I mean? It's a lot of games in the first maybe 10 games of the season were, as Sunderland fans, would probably thought win at least 6 or 7 out of them. You know what I mean? But you just never know.
I think it sort of damage limitation in the second half after already being 2-0 down, since no shot on target was registered after the 40th minute for Sunderland in that game, and that really shows how bad the first half was. That you got 2 shots on target, you got a shot on target in that first half for a couple, and Dick Advocaat still said that the second half performance was better because just how poor the first half was. But you'd move on to midweek with a 4-1 defeat in the League Cup to Manchester City at home, but that, I suppose, you just sort of brush that off and think, well, the league. More important, it's Manchester City. Toivonen got his first goal in that game.
Yeah, was that the Aguero hat-trick? Did he score a hat-trick? Oh, he scored 2 against us.
I will check that. It is... No, it was Aguero, De Bruyne, a Mannone own goal, and Raheem Sterling, and it was 4-0 after 36 minutes.
Oh,
and Toivonen scored late on.
Oh, yeah, Toivonen, was it that, it was like a header at the 2 yards out or something like that?
Yeah. First start for DeAndre Yedlin in this game. As we're well into September now. And now we come on to a bit of a weird point in the pod, as at this point in the season, this is where you travel to Old Trafford, where Dick Advocaat comes up against his old adversary from the Eredivisie in Manchester United's Louis van Gaal. And Aaron, you found something to do with these too early. Do you want to tell us about it?
So basically, when they were both managers in the Eredivisie, obviously Van Gaal is at Eindhoven, and Advocaat and Ajax. They went for a photo shoot, like for like a face-off sort of thing, for like the equivalent of Super Sunday over in Holland. And Dick Advocaat was a saucy man. Basically, him and Van Gaal were standing there in this room, and two girls came in with one with an Ajax kit and one with a PSV Eindhoven kit that were painted on. So like they had nothing on underneath, maybe just like a pair of knickers or something, no bras or anything like that. And then obviously I don't think they knew anything about it till afterwards. Then someone asked Dick about it, and he said, I can't remember what exact words were, but it was something along the lines of, unfortunately, they were already painted when we entered the room.
Well.
It was... In this game, there weren't too much paint going about, but there were three goals that were scored in this game. Unfortunately, none of them for Sunderland, as they fell to defeat, where they held their own in the first half, really, but collapsed in the second. And this would now mean, from all of their games in all competitions, where at the end of September, Sunderland have conceded 23 goals. And you're thinking, that can't... everyone says you need a goal scorer to stay up, and that's what Sunderland did have this season, but surely at least a half-solid defence would help. And if you're looking at here, you conceded 3 to Manchester United, 4 to Manchester City, 2 against Bournemouth, 1 to Tottenham, 2 against Aston Villa, 3 to Exeter in the League Cup, 1 to Swansea, 3 to Norwich, and 4 to Leicester. No clean sheet yet this season. How much of a worry would that be when you're heading into October and not having a clean sheet yet? And not only not having a clean sheet, but shipping like quite hefty goals on a regular basis. How much of a worry would that be for you, James?
I think, the one thing you could level at it, that number was that including like the City game and the League Cup as well, the 23. Yeah, the one thing sort of you could maybe use in defence is that they've played Spurs, played Leicester, who I think by this stage sort of everyone was beginning to get a sense they've got considerably more about them this season. Obviously played City as well, who I think they started that season winning, like, I can't remember how many it was, but I'm pretty sure they won their first 5 or 6 games. So they probably caught them at the best time, and then they became a bit more inconsistent after that. But yeah, I think when you look at, obviously they've also played Villa, who'd end up getting relegated, Norwich, who'd end up getting relegated, and Bournemouth obviously is a newly promoted team. The patterns aren't great at all. It's sort of, if you're looking for symptoms, isn't a good word to use at the moment, but symptoms of like relegation potential, then you're sort of ticking a few too many of the boxes, really, at that point. But the one positive they have is that at least you're not into October yet, so it could just be a really, really ropey start.
And as we do go into October, Sunderland sit bottom of the league, with only 2 points collected off of Swansea and Aston Villa, and they are 4 off safety at this stage. And this is where Dick Advocaat falls into what's at the time seemed to be the Sunderland manager curse of appointed mid-season, do wonders, keep them up, get a few good results, get really on side with the fans, have a summer to build, and then it all falls apart. It seemed to be like, I think it happened with Di Canio, Poyet, and Advocaat, like 3 in a row. Yeah. It just seemed like a Sunderland tradition for this to happen, and his time would come at home to West Ham, where it seemed that Sunderland were well on course to get their first win of the season. 2-0 up after a smart corner, Stephen Fletcher fired home, and followed by, I said, well, Richie's was one of the goals of the season. This is it. I've watched this goal about 10 times today in preparation for it. Jermaine Lenz picks up the ball, runs to the edge of the box, and he has no right to try and chip the keeper from where he is. But it's one of the strangest chips I've ever seen, because it doesn't just loop up and then come back down. It's sort of like, it's one of the most powerful chips I've ever seen, because he puts his toe through it, and it just loops over the keeper, but with pace and then off of the underside of the bar. It's one of the most aesthetically pleasing goals I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was unbelievable goal. I'm sure he got sent off in that game, though, didn't he, Lenz?
He did.
Yeah. If that epitomises Sunderland as a football club. Something wonderful happens, and then the player goes and gets sent off. I think that really just shows what kind of club we are.
You see that, Cam, but later on, what we'll get to against Newcastle, there's a moment where someone done something wonderful and they didn't receive any punishment for it whatsoever.
Yeah, we will get to that.
We'll get to that.
Yeah,
we'll very much get to that. And so yeah, 2-0 up after this, and granted, West Ham pulled one back before our time through Cole Jenkinson, but still Sunderland looked very much in control of this game, and even in starting the second half, they looked the better side, and they looked like they're ready to put West Ham to the sword. And then Jermaine Lens gets his second booking for a poor challenge, and an unnecessary challenge. The ball just ran away from him and he lashed out, already on a yellow card. It was daft. It was daft from the winger who'd seemed to have made himself a hero earlier in the game with such an audacious chip. But then an effort would come from outside of the box, which it had some power on it, but one you'd expect when it's straight at a Premier League keeper to keep hold of. That Costello, it was a bit too hot for Costello Pantilimon, who parried, and Dimitri Payet was the first to react and slot home. And there was still half an hour to go in this game, but it did end all square. And Jermaine Defoe was left out of this game, interestingly enough, and he'd not had the hottest of starts to the season. But you think a reliant goal scorer, you'd probably want to keep him in your starting 11 at Premier League level. But then in the press conference, it came really telling what was going to happen, as Dick Advocaat was asked by... I watched this back today, because I watched back the Premier League years episode of this today just to get ready for it. And a journalist asked him, what does your future look like? And then just another journalist just shouts, "That was my question." He's just what?
Brilliant journalism right there, isn't it?
Yeah. He just I can't tell if he was joking or if he was genuinely annoyed. He was like, "Oh, that's my question." But then Dick Advocaat just says, "I've made a decision," and then gets up and walks away. And before he leaves, someone asked, saying, "Have you got a message for the fans?" And they said, if they want it, they can wait. And then just one journalist sort of sarcastically just goes, "Well, bye, Dick." And and the door closes, on Dick Advocaat's Sunderland career, as the next day he resigns. And obviously the start to this season, going up to the 3rd of October without a win in the league, doesn't leave him with the greatest impression, but he got himself really popular with the Sunderland fans in the season before, so unfortunate for him in this that he just seemed to have fell to the curse of Sunderland managers. And at this time, what names, other than the one that we'll definitely get to, did get appointed? What names did you see thrown about for this job, Aaron and Cam? Either of you want to take a go at this?
I think I seen Mark Hughes in the loop somewhere. Mark Leslie Hughes.
Oh yeah, Mark Hughes.
He's always about, though, isn't he? Whenever we lose a manager, it's always Mark Hughes. Wait, not so much now because obviously lower league football and stuff like that. But he's always floating around there somewhere.
Where is Mark Hughes now?
Yeah, I don't think he's got a job because he effectively took Stoke down before they brought Paul Lambert in, and then he went to Southampton and nearly took them down as well. And then Southampton sacked him to bring in Hasenhüttl, and I don't think he's been seen since. I think he'd gone past his sell-by date, I think, by now.
Yeah.
Because he did a decent job with Stoke for a few years, but when that ran out, and before then he did all right jobs at Man City and Blackburn. I did a pretty decent job at Blackburn.
Was Wilder in the mix then as well, or was that a couple of years later?
That was when you got relegated after Moyes had left. Because I remember seeing that Sunderland were after Chris Wilder and they wanted Billy Sharp as well.
Yeah.
I was just there right, so we're going to get relegated.
Little did you know, Harvey.
Yeah, but thankfully that didn't happen. Well, for me anyway, not so much for you. Yeah, so, names like you say, Mark Hughes got dotted about, and I'm sure a few other typical names will have got chucked into the mix. I think at that time as well, like Gianfranco Zola seemed to be up for every like job in the Premier League and the Championship as well. He'd always be a good one for the bookmakers to chuck in. But the man that you went with was a survival specialist.
Oh, yes.
A walkout specialist, in what I mean that he has my favourite Sky Sports graphic walkout of all time, where he turns around, walks out, crosses his arm, and looks up as if he's looking at a chippy menu. And
yeah,
very best.
It's the man himself. It's Sam Allardyce, who on the 9th of October 2015 is appointed as Sunderland manager. He used to play for Sunderland, played 25 times for Sunderland. And does anyone know why he left?
Why he left?
Yeah, because he was still commuting from Bolton, and he'd impressed in the games that he had played for Sunderland, but he was obviously tired of the travelling, and he asked the chairman to help fund buying him a home in Sunderland or in somewhere local, and the chairman just said no, so he left.
Oh, well, fair enough.
Put a transfer request in and left.
It's a canny trek, that, though, you know. What was it?
Yeah.
A couple of hours, 2-3 hours?
Yeah, 2-3 hours.
Yeah, but yeah,
Sick
well, a
though,
bit
bro.
the case of like David McGoldrick travelling from Nottingham to Ipswich, like for training all the time, and everyone wondered why he was injured all the time.
Yeah.
But what was your initial reaction, Cam, when this happened? First take into account his record for keeping teams in the Premier League and what he'd done with likes of West Ham and Bolton previously, but also the Newcastle link. What were your thoughts going on at the time?
Well, I was significantly more hopeful of staying up, obviously, given his track record. His obviously previous employment at Newcastle, not a particularly great thing for us Sunderland fans, but I think as we go on to see the job he did against Newcastle in the game that I believe was 1 or 2 games time, second game in charge I think it was. Second game, yeah, it was a magical moment. It was probably one of the best Sunderland games I've ever been to in my life. Big Sam was a part of, so yeah.
Aaron, what were your thoughts on when Sam Allardyce got appointed initially?
I was exactly the same as Cam, to be fair. Obviously I knew he had previous with Newcastle and stuff like that, but I kind of just looked straight past that. I mean, growing up when I was a young lad, late 90s, early 2000s, like he was in charge of like the likes of Bolton, you know what I mean? And he would always do an absolute job for Bolton, and obviously his reputation precedes him, you know what I mean? Like that's the only way to see it. Like he gets the job done. We were in a relegation battle early on in the season. We needed a survival specialist. We got one.
You did indeed, but he didn't get off to the greatest start. So 1-0 loss at West Brom was his first game, but he and in that game, quite controversial. There was a fairly blatant foul on Yunus Kabul in the build-up to Saido Berahino's winner. But Sam Allardyce was happy with the performance, and he would be much happier with the result that he got in the next game, which was the first time we had derby of the season. And
happier times.
I'd put a case for this being the strangest time we had derby ever from an outsider's point of view. Because, not to cause any offence and not to get any Sunderland fans angrily DMing me on Twitter, but for the first 45 minutes, Newcastle battered Sunderland. Newcastle were absolutely all over Sunderland. Probably should have had a penalty with, I think, what Aaron alluded to earlier, with Wijnaldum turning on the edge of the box. Was it John O'Shea? I'm never remembering that wrong.
I wasn't talking about that, but yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
They should have had a penalty.
But the penalty was awarded just before half-time as Colaccini
It's a shoulder ball.
Fouled inside the area, and not only fouled, it was deemed a red card offence by the referee, which sent Steve McLaren and his hair island apoplectic. Adam Johnson stepped up and put that penalty away, sending Sunderland in 1-0 at half-time. What was the thing you were alluding to then, Aaron?
I was on about Catamol and Colby.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
20 seconds into the game or something, he said that he was going to go through, and he indeed did. I didn't think he even got a yellow card for that, did he?
I don't think he did.
Might have got a yellow card, but
Yeah, there
it
was a few tackles in that game that were a bit questionable.
It was a red card offence, hands down, but I guess the referee kind of just let them get on with it. It was early on in the game, you know.
It's a derby game.
Exactly.
No, he didn't. I'm just checking now. He didn't get a booking.
No, fair enough. Callback, obviously, had to walk all the way around the Stadium of Light, to which Sunderland fans gave him a nice little ovation on the way past.
Callback did actually get booked in that game just before half-time. So Colaccini off. Newcastle, after dominating for 45 minutes and now a goal down and a man down going into half-time, clearly rattled as they come out for the second half. Sunderland are in their heads. The atmosphere must be getting to them at this stage, and Billy Jones makes it 2-0. And at this point, Billy Jones is just such an unlikely scorer, especially in a game like that. Like, popping up and, well, if you're going to do it any time, if you're going to score one, score against Newcastle.
Corner, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're going to score against Newcastle. And it was rounded off by a great move with a brilliant finish from Stephen Fletcher, late doors, 3-0.
I think the pass from Yunus Kabil was
for a centre back. What a ball that was! He was so good with the ball at his feet. It was cool.
Second to none. He was a ball playing centre off, wasn't
he? Yeah,
it was
hard.
If I could do that for the university team, then I think I'd be held in a much higher order.
Is that why you keep trying the diags? One day you'll get a Yunus Kabul off, huh?
Yeah, that's what it is. I'm hoping. Well, we obviously need a striker on the end of it, so hopefully, come September, have a lovely striker, and I'll be playing those Yunus Kabul balls forward.
I've seen a few.
And that
I enjoy playing against you, Cam.
Thank you.
Because you just know what's going to happen. I mean, I'm not going to get off. I know I'm not going to get off topic, but as soon as Cam gets that ball, you just think, right, I'm just going to drop back a little bit from the other side of the pitch because I know he's going to try and hit someone running in behind me here.
Oh yeah, nothing wrong with a diag. What can I say?
Not at all.
Right. 3-0 in the time we had Derby. Amazing way to. It's the first game at the Stadium of Light, and Sam Allardyce came the fourth Sunderland manager to have the time we had Derby as his second game and win, which is a really niche and weird stat, but it's true. And it would be Sunderland's highest attended home game of the season, 47,000, filling the Stadium of Light to see a terrific Derby win.
Yeah.
And the great times wouldn't last too long, though.
Yeah. Is it a trip to the Merseyside?
It is. It's a trip to Goodison Park.
Yeah.
Where Sunderland fell 2-0 down, but brought it back to 2-2. So you're thinking, 2-0 down, 2-2 away from home, get a decent point. Now you lose 6-2. It's not great.
I believe that's a hat-trick from Premier League legend Aruna Cornier.
Yeah, it's not great. I'll say that much. Wes Brown gets his first start of the season in this game. Allardyce made the curious decision after being so successful against Newcastle to switch to a back three in this game, and it sort of costs them as well. Clearly, just the defensive frailties were clear for all to see, and Allardyce saying at the game that his players let his emotions get carried away, and another loss would come the week after with a 1-0 home defeat to Southampton. And Southampton, they were pushing Champions League that season, if I remember rightly. I think was this just pre-Liverpool raid, James, of Southampton?
Kind of mid-Liverpool raid almost. Like it was a pretty prolonged process. But I mean, like Mane was still there. We bought Lovren a couple of summers before. Bought Klein that summer, summer of 2015.
Lallana was already at Liverpool, wasn't he?
Yes, that was Lallana's second season, so it was sort of kind of in the middle of it almost, and then it was Mane's last season there. Like Mane had a good year there that season, but I think that they were looking at the table, they were like 3-4 points off Champions League come the end of the season, so that gives an impression of where they were at.
Was this
Fell
the season
victim
that Gabby
to-
Adini was playing out of his skin?
I think that might have been the season after. I think this was like Graziano Pella, like era. Southampton.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh wait, no, actually, that might have been the year before. I think that was the year before Graziano Pella. 'Cause Graziano Pella was only there for a short space of time. This might be Gabby. No, I can't remember.
Pella was there, I think. Looking at it,
Pella
but I feel like he was better in 14-15 though,
Yeah.
for some reason. Like, no, I don't know
Yeah.
whether he was.
This was like Dusan Tadic showing like Ajax level form
Yeah.
Yeah.
because he scored in this game.
Yeah, it was a penalty.
Penalty, Jan Villa gave away the penalty, and Tadic slotted home. But you'd get back to winning ways with what can I only describe is an Allardyce classic. A 1-0 win away at Crystal Palace, where you didn't see a lot of the ball. You were great on the counter-attack, but it faced a lot of shots, and it was just a defensive masterclass. And I read the BBC's report on it, and they described Sunderland's formation for the majority of this game as an 8-1-1, with a back five being deployed, and the central midfielders just coming right back into that, and Stephen Fletcher sort of sitting in a relaxed striker role in midfield with Jermaine Defoe up front. Yeah. And it would be Jermaine Defoe who got the winner in this game after a defensive error from Crystal Palace about 80 minutes in. So a late winner, first win on the road. And even though you've got a few losses under Allardyce, the Derby win and the first away win of the season, how are you feeling as a Sunderland fan, Aaron, at this point in the season? You're into November at this point.
Obviously, we were all a bit rejoiceful that the wheels had started moving on the bus. You know what I mean? Would finally got a good result. As far as a 1-0 is a good result, you know what I mean? It's a win at the end of the day. I don't know. I wasn't really a fan of Allardyce's style of football in the sense of parking the bus, essentially, you know what I mean? But he did what needed to be done. And as far as feelings, I would say I was happy to finally have our first win of the season, and hopefully things could only get better from there.
And you'd get another home win just after this, 5 days later, with a 2-0 home victory over Stoke City. Ryan Shawcross saw red in this game for a poorly timed challenge. And 2 goals after the 80th minute, 2 late strikes from Patrick Van Arnholt and Duncan Watmore saw 3 points at the Sol.
Watmore got upset as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. It was a good turn by Watmore, and he just wrestled him to the floor, basically.
That was a good Stoke team as well. That wasn't it? That I mean,
yeah.
Shaqiri, Bojan, Arnautovic. Not
a good year
not
for
any in that team.
Yeah.
And they, this was the first time of the season that Sunderland had got themselves out of the bottom 3. They wouldn't stay out of it for long, but this season Sunderland spent more days in the bottom 3 than any other side in the Premier League this season, and still stayed up, which is miraculous in itself. And Allardyce even said so after the game. They were out of the bottom 3. He said that the form that they were currently on was still relegation level form, which is a good. I think that just shows that he's trying to keep his players grounded and trying to get the best out of them while he can. And I think Van Arnholt's goal in this game is something like I like to describe as a FIFA classic goal. Because it's one of those, like, if you're not good at taking free kicks on FIFA, what you do is you get someone to stand on the other side of it, roll it across to someone to just blast it. And that's what Van Arnholt did and drilled it in. He's got a good left foot on him, to be fair. And it worked wonders. But 2 wins on the bounce wouldn't be how it would continue for Sunderland as they entered December.
Yeah, it wasn't a great December. Didn't we lose? Was it like 5 or 6 games or something we lost on the bounce?
It was 5 games in December. It was a pretty dark Christmas period for the Black Cats. So I'll just run you through quickly all these games. A 3-1 away defeat to Arsenal, a 1-0 home defeat to Watford, a 3-1 defeat away at Chelsea, which would be just after the sacking of Jose Mourinho, I think, because hitting with watching from the stands. 4-1 away defeat to Manchester City with Barini getting his first goal since returning on deadline day. It took him till December till Boxing Day to get that goal. And then you'd end the year off with a 1-0 home defeat to James to Liverpool. And Christian Benteke getting on the score sheet. Do you remember much from that game?
I remember bits from it. I don't think we played brilliantly. I'm pretty sure Sunderland had a few chances. I remember, I think Firmino hit the post, hit the bar, because that was around the time when sort of he was just beginning to sort of show flashes of what he was about. Firmino over that sort of 2-month period where Klopp was kind of playing him as like either a 10 or a false 9. He was beginning to sort of show us what he was and some of the unique attributes he could bring. But yeah, I think it was one of those where on another day potentially we draw 0-0. I think it was a chance, I'm pretty sure it was a few seconds into the second half, literally, and ball just deflected into Benteke's path and he just sort of swept it in. I think that was at a time where he was still a relatively ruthless finisher, because he seems to have a bit of a kind of scoring block at the moment, doesn't he? Kind of, unfortunately, it's just confidence or whatever. But I think, was that the match afterwards where Sam Allardyce, tongue in cheek, I think, but he called Klopp a soft German or something like that?
I think so, yeah. I think it was this game.
I think it was after that, and I mean, sort of partially tongue in cheek, but I think, I mean, Journo's dream, isn't it? Just latch onto that.
Yeah.
And this would be the halfway mark of the season in the Premier League, and Sunderland would sit 19th in the table, 12 points and 7 points off safety, which isn't it's not an unattainable goal, but it's not a great place to be halfway through the season. But would you say halfway through the season at this stage, 19, 7 points off, are you fearing the worst?
Yeah, I think, if I remember right, I was feeling, obviously, we weren't in a great place in terms of league table and points, but I think, obviously, given Allardyce would have, obviously, the window he did have, obviously not knowing that at the time, but I thought maybe if Allardyce comes in and he, chooses some players that he feels is suitable to change the way we were playing and change our league position, then we would ultimately be in a better off position than we were, because that's Allardyce's bread and butter, really, isn't it? Keeping teams up in the Premier League. So I think that was always in the back of my mind as well.
As we enter the halfway, we enter the January transfer window, where Sunderland were very active in both ins and outs. And touching on outs first, the only player to leave for a fee would be, for most of this season, your number one, Costel Pantilimon, would leave for Watford, £6 million. 2 players would leave for Blackburn on loan in Danny Graham and Jordi Gomez. A young Lyndon Gooch would go to Doncaster on loan for the second half of the season. And Mavrias, the Greek, would go to Dusseldorf in Germany for the back half of the season. And probably the strangest one, and I always remember this happens every now and then, and it still confuses me to this day, is Stephen Fletcher having a nice little holiday in Marseille for the back half of this season, which I still don't work out how this happened, but fair play to him, I suppose, getting a move to Marseille. Yeah. But
that's very good agent.
Yeah, on the ins, Steve Harper was brought in on a free, former long-time Newcastle goalkeeper, was brought in on a free transfer. Didier Ndoye was brought in on loan, the centre-forward from Trabzonspor in Turkey. And then for the players that he paid for, obviously at different points in the window, Jan Kirchhoff would arrive from Bayern Munich for an absolute steal of £750,000 when you look back on it. Unbelievable business there from Sunderland. Lamina Kone would join for £5 million from Lorient, and he'd continue the French shopping spree with a £9 million fee for Wabi Kazri from Bordeaux. And a lot of those are real. Well, I'd say a lot of those. 3 out of the 5 of those are really quite important to the back half of Sunderland's season.
Yeah.
In Kirchhoff, Kone, and Kazri. And I think it showed that Allardyce knew what he wanted. He said after this that a lot of these players were on his radar as soon as he joined Sunderland. He listed who he wanted in January. It was just getting them over the line. And he did. So another another decent amount of money spent. Another 19 million. Oh, sorry, no. 90, why have I put 19 million? It's not 19 million spent because that's bad maths. But yeah, it's still a decent amount of money spent. About I'm reading wrong because it's dark. 14.75 million spent in that window. Sunderland bring it in and then collecting 6 million from the sale of Pantilimon. So still not doing too bad, and you start the new year off in an ideal fashion, seeing off Aston Villa 3-1 at the first game at the Stadium Blight in 2016. And it's a relegation 6-pointer, this really, and even at this stage in the season, this early on, I think it was fair to say that. And Sunderland had to win this game, and they did.
Yeah.
Jermaine Defoe was on the score sheet this game, and Sam Allardyce would say after the game, "Thank God for Jermaine Defoe," which I think sort of like suits well with his spell on Wearside. Is "Thank God for Jermaine Defoe." I sort of think that's a nice like little tagline to Sam Allardyce at Sunderland. Carlos Hill scored a great equaliser for Aston Villa in this game, by the way. Like a volley inside the area that nestled into the top corner. But
he
yeah,
liked
it was
the screamer actually, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He did. He could pull it out every now and then. Scored a really good goal against Leicester, I think, in the same season.
Yeah. I think I vaguely remember that one. Had some left foot on him.
Yeah, and Aaron, how important is it to win the games against teams like Aston Villa who are going to be down there and in it with you?
At the end of the day, mate, like you say, it's a 6-point battle, isn't it? Obviously, especially with the teams in and around the relegation zone, them are the sides where it matters the most if you're beating them and taking points away from them. I suppose it's all good and well trouncing Man United 3-0 or beating Liverpool 1-0 or whatever and getting 3 points from that, but if you're not doing the basic stuff like beating the teams that are around you, you're not really getting rid of any of the danger, because if them are not losing points, then you're losing points, really, you know what I mean?
Yeah, very well said. And the changes in this game, Watmore and O'Shea started, and then after this you'd go to the third round of the FA Cup, which would be a very early exit at the Emirates Stadium against Arsenal.
Was that Pickford's first game?
It was. I've got that written down. Yeah. Plenty of changes in this side, and Pickford earned his first start. And Allardyce after said that he'd be mad not to bring Pickford back after the half of the season that he had at Preston. Really impressed, and would go on to impress in a Sunderland shirt as well. And a bit of trivia I saw on this: Arsenal haven't lost in the third round of the FA Cup since 1996. Could any of you tell me who beat them?
Sheffield Wednesday.
Incorrect. And I would not include it if that was the answer.
Oh, yeah, that is a very good point. Sorry, Harvey.
Yeah.
Was it Leeds?
It wasn't.
Wasn't us, was it?
No. Go on, James. I'll leave it to you.
I really hope it's not us, not downstairs. I don't know, maybe Wenger wouldn't have been there then, would he? Not quite.
No, I don't think so.
Newcastle, just to be sort of stir the pot.
Sheffield United were the last team to
Oh,
go.
shock! Absolute shock, Harvey.
I thought Cameron said it straight away.
I'm gutted I didn't latch onto that.
Horrible.
Any excuse to Bow Street.
Yeah, indeed. Even if it was 4 years before I was born, I'm still going to boast about it.
Still take.
But we'll go on to happier things for Sunderland in the next game as another relegation 6-pointer comes around, this time at the Liberty Stadium against Swansea City, where a Jermaine Defoe hat-trick wipes the floor with Gary Monk's men. Merry Monk's men swept aside by Sunderland in this game. And actually, was this Gary Monk or had he gone by this point? I don't know. He left. He got sacked this season. I think he was still there.
I think he was still there as well. Yeah.
Oh yeah, he was because he. Oh wait, no, he wasn't. He wasn't. He was. They were in between managers in this game. Because the interim. Go on.
I'm gonna have to disappear for a sec. I've got my charger. Is that all right with you?
Yep, that's fine. Just rejoin when you're in it. That's fine. The perils of a uni student podcast, everyone. But yeah, 4-2 win in this game. Sam Allardyce rightly called it an enormous victory. Defoe hat-trick. A controversial red card in the first half for Kyle Norton, who he won the ball in a challenge, but the referee deemed that he had his studs up and it was reckless. A red card was given. I think Allardyce sort of like admitted after the game. He said, "Well, we got given an advantage, warranted or not, but we did what accordingly, as you should do." But yeah, another massive result for Sunderland in this season, because this is before you really hit your stride. Like, you hit your stride at the end of this season.
Oh yeah,
but
definitely.
to go away from home at a relegation rival and score 4, it's a massive statement of intent. And well, you'd score 4 in this game. Unfortunately, you concede 4 in the next away at Tottenham.
Yeah.
And this would be, I know you've got a word or two to say about this, because this would be the debut of one Jan Kirchhoff, which this game doesn't really quite reflect his time at Sunderland, does it, Aaron?
Not at all. Basically, I remember saying, I watched the full 90 minutes, obviously on the television, and I seen this Jan Kirchhoff, this 6-foot-odd giant, who came from Bayern Munich, and obviously I was absolutely lapping it up when we announced the signing of him. And then he had probably one of the worst debuts I think I've ever seen in my life.
I believe I've just came up to the Kirchhoff game. Is that right?
See, it says it all. Let's see, he had an absolute stinker, but you know, he kind of made up for the rest of the season. He was probably one of our best midfielders, alongside Jan MV that year. So, stinker of a game. I'm sure Lee Barry Catamol scored an own goal as well. The ball kind of just rolled up and over him on the face of the goal. But Spurs, you know what I mean? The one of the big 6 teams in the Premier League. You know, it's not that disheartening at the end of the day.
No, and Pickford would continue to enjoy his North London days out after making his first Sunderland start against Arsenal. He would make his first Premier League start away at Spurs, and even though conceding 4, he was heavily praised by both his manager and the media after the game. But it would note that this season, all 3 Sunderland goalkeepers in their first game conceded 4, with Gostal Pantilimon conceding 4 against Leicester on the opening day of the season. I believe Manone conceding 4 against City. I might be wrong there. It might have been a league game we conceded 4. I'll go back. Before then.
Thing is with JP though, like even though he conceded 4, like we knew he was a wonder kid. You know what I mean? I'm sure he was getting like people saying like, oh, he was man of the match, despite them getting beat 4-0.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that day it wouldn't be great for Sunderland. He'd fall to 19th after Newcastle would pick a 2-1 win up at home to West Ham, and Swansea would win the following day as well. So it wasn't looking great. Swansea managed to drown themselves out of that quite a lot by the end of the season, but at this point they were definitely in it. They were, which is why Gary Monk lost his job. They were well in the battle. And the next game, you'd pick up a point against Bournemouth at home. I'll do a point from the looks of it. Not really much to say on this game. It'd be your last game of January, then January 19th. Van Aanholt would score for, I think he was like the 3rd or 4th game in a row, something like that. He was on a quite good scoring streak at this point. Bournemouth controlled most of the game as they like to control the ball, but Sunderland held out well for a point and would kick off February with a game that you were touching on before we started recording, Cam, a 1-0 home defeat to Manchester City.
Yeah.
If you want to talk us through this one.
What was this? I don't know if it's possibly skewed memory, but was this Cornet's first game?
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember he obviously flattened Yaya Toure, which was like, that is just my favourite memory from that season. It was like a 50-50, and Yaya Toure just bounced off him. I'm sure he picked the ball up in his own half as well, and he ran about 40 yards with it. I don't think anything came of, obviously nothing came of it, but I just remember watching thinking, you know, we actually might have a decent centre half here. Obviously, I think Aguero scored the goal. Being at this game, I was at the game with my dad, and it was the coldest game of football I've ever been to in my entire life. I genuinely thought I was going to die in the stand. It was so cold. And the only bit of warmth was the Yaya Toure incident. I think that was the only time in the hour and a half where I wasn't cold.
There was two other players who would make their sole debuts that night in Doy, and Kaz would come on as well. But yeah, a 1-0 defeat, but Sam Allardyce would call it after the game the best performance he'd seen from his Sunderland side since arriving, and against the side of Man City's quality. A 1-0 defeat at home, you're never really going to be too disappointed with that. But you'd be very happy with the next result. I don't know if James will be, after Liverpool blew a 2-0 lead late on. After it was a really interesting set of circumstances. Liverpool were 1-0 up for the majority of the game, looked quite comfortable, scored a second with about 20 minutes left to go, and the Liverpool fans had planned, some Liverpool fans had planned a protest for the 77th minute, protesting the ticket prices that were suggested for next season. And this almost seemed to spark the comeback. Adam Johnson scoring a free kick in what would be his last game for Sunderland, before Jermaine Defoe levelled late on. And it's just a surreal game in Premier League history, really. We're just seeing a full Anfield one moment and a half-empty one the next, with Sunderland running riot and snatching a point almost, James.
Yeah, it was kind of, from the fans' perspective, kind of Sunderland might have actually kind of done us a favour in terms of, like, if you're looking for an example, whether it, obviously no way really of knowing whether it would have happened had things just been normal in the last 15 minutes, but the fans go, and so fans disappear, and so does the win. So it's quite a good sort of example of how fans can have an impact. But I mean, credit to Sunderland as well, because I mean that's a pretty so easy just to roll over when you're sort of away from home at a team sort of on paper who'd maybe be expecting to get the result on the day, and they just weren't having it. They saw an opportunity. Adam Johnson gets one back from the free kick. Obviously, that's all another story as well. But yeah, I think if I remember correctly, like Mignolet probably should have saved the free kick, but then he can't do anything about the next goal, because I think Defoe is like classic Defoe goal, just shows his experience, pins Sacco, and then just one of his sort of typically sort of low, next to no backlift shots, just pings it in from about 15 yards, and yeah, but no, and Klopp wasn't actually there that day either. It was quite strange because he had like a ruptured
surgery, hadn't
he? Yeah. So, and sort of from, try not to turn this into a Liverpool podcast, but from Liverpool's perspective, I think some people feel like maybe that helped him as well. The fact that he wasn't there on the day and had to deal with all the sort of awkwardness that can come with a scenario like that. So yeah, just a bit of a strange game, but I mean, credit to Sunderland really, because it looked like there was nothing there for them with 15 minutes to go, but they got something out of it and built quite well from there as the season went on.
Do you think this is a turning point, Aaron, in Sunderland's season?
It's hard to see it, to be fair, mate, because the Premier League especially is one of the most unpredictable things in the world, you know what I mean? And it might feel like everything's coming up nil-house 1 second, and then the next minute you're getting thumped 5-6-0, and you're back to square one, you know what I mean? So it definitely felt like a great feat to have accomplished. I mean, like James says, the fans at Anfield are second to none. And Anfield away is probably the hardest game in world football, in my opinion, on the day, you know what I mean? Yeah. You're seeing what they've done to Barcelona and stuff like that, and the fans had a big part to play in that. So I feel like if we could go there, and despite them not having the full support when we scored the goals, you know what I mean, and bag a couple and get a draw from Anfield, then it's an amazing feeling for any football fan, I suppose, you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course, and as mentioned, this was Adam Johnson's final game for the football club after him and his legal team decided to plead guilty to the charges brought against him. Sunderland let him go, sacked on just pretty much immediately, which I don't think anyone can criticise that decision from the football club. And the next game would be back at the Salt, and a huge 3 points over Manchester United in the Premier League, with Khazri Correct me if I'm wrong. Kazri opened the scoring quite early.
Yeah. It was a free kick from. I think it wasn't even in shooting range. I don't think it was
ridiculous.
It wasn't a particularly good looking free kick. It kind of just went through everyone. I don't think De Gea really expected it, and it somehow crept in.
I was sat behind the goal for that, and it looked like someone was going to get a flick on it. I don't know if it was Defoe or someone, and it looked like they were in prime position to get like a little heel flick on it, and they ended up not connecting with the ball, and I think that's what threw De Gea off, and it just trickled into the bottom left-hand corner.
Yeah.
Martial would equalise that game for Manchester United, but fairly late on, I think Sam Allardyce really wanted this to be given as Lamina Kone's goal, but it eventually went down as a De Gea own goal because I think Kone just forced the issue a lot.
Yeah.
But just a huge win. It's always great to beat Manchester United, but this was the first time that Sunderland had done that at the Stadium of Light on the 14th attempt. They had finally bested the Red Devils, even though the in 2012, when did Man City win the league? 2012?
Yeah.
2012. Well, it must have felt like a win that day, with even though Man United were out 1-0 winners. The scenes after. Yeah.
And they had an absolutely dire squad out that day against us as well, because I remember I think they had like quite a couple of youth, well, not youth players, but second stream players and stuff in the squad. I don't know what crap was with whether it be injury or international duties or whatever, but they had a really weak squad out and we made them pay for it. Like,
so that black blue kit, the EON one, like the striped one, if I remember rightly. Yeah.
I remember. Well, Sunderland, like Man United fans, still like hold a grudge against Sunderland fans for that now, and I find that really weird. Because I saw I remember it always sticks out in my mind. I think I was like at home because you were on Sky the first game of last season against Charlton, and you went 1-0 down in that game. And I remember just looking on Twitter and the replies to like the tweet saying you've gone 1-0 down, just full of Man United fans.
Yeah.
And I was just like, well, you clearly haven't got anything better to do with your Saturday afternoon.
Because Ferguson was quite bitter about.
Yeah, he was.
He was fuming, wasn't he?
About everything.
Yeah, that is a good point, to be fair. Yeah.
He seems like a very bitter man.
Yeah. But
just
tactical genius, nonetheless.
And then just, I don't know. I mean, you might as well try and enjoy it, mightn't you? If you're there and you're sort of part of something. It's just nuts. It's like literally something out of a Roy of the Rovers book, isn't it? That kind of scenario.
If the shoes are on the other foot and like that result sends Sunderland down, like Man United fans would be
same bit.
So I think
football, isn't it?
Yeah, football indeed. And Sam Allardyce after this game would just he'd sort of like praise the mentality of his squad, and he'd say that the club at the moment is the happiest that it had been since he arrived, which is I think is a good way to build confidence in your squad, saying things like that. And it's just 1 point from within safety. And I think maybe it's a bad time to go into an international break here, because you have, I don't even know if it's an international break, but you've got a 2-week break. It's in February, so I'm assuming it was. Going off a draw at Anfield.
FA Cup?
Oh, it could have been FA Cup, yeah.
One of the two.
Yeah, so a victory, like a point at Anfield, a victory over Manchester United, and a 2-week break, not ideal, and you lose your next game at West Ham due to a Mikel Antonio goal. Allardyce in that game said they deserved a draw. Looking back, probably right, but not too significant in the grand scheme of things. Just one of those games, I suppose, where you lose to a side who was doing better than you in the league that season. And a very interesting game comes next, again against Crystal Palace, where big £9 million Conor Wickham comes back to bite his former club with 2 goals. And Barini, Wickham. Well, we'll talk about those goals actually. Like Wickham winning 2, what was that, like 6 second half minutes. And how does that feel, seeing someone that you'd let go in the summer for a significant fee that probably at the time you're laughing about, thinking, how have we got £9 million for this player, coming back and scoring 2 at your own ground, Aaron?
Yeah, bit us on the backside, like, didn't it?
Yeah.
We knew the danger of Conor Wickham, you know what I mean? Like, he always had something about him where, although he was never going to score buckets full of goals, he always had that goal threat about him. And obviously for him to come against Sunderland and do it against us, it was a little bit bitter, but can't hold a grudge against that. It's what he's paid to do at the end of the day, isn't it?
And Ndoye got his first Sunderland goal in this game, putting you 1-0 up before Conor Wickham's goals. Then Barini scored. It's such a. I've watched this goal back about 10 times today. I just can't make sense of it because I can't work out if he's trying to cross it. I don't know what the goalkeeper's doing. The fans are taken by. Everyone's taken because he's like at the byline of the box. He's got no support.
Just dipped.
And he just like turns, just puts his foot through it, and the ball just like it looks like he kicks the air out of the ball.
Yeah.
It moves really quickly, but like you say, it just dips. And
it's like a knuckle almost, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like across the goalkeeper. It looks like a cross, and he looks surprised. He looks really angry. When he scores it. Like all the players are like, "Oh, that went in," and like no fans. It's not one of those where the fans are like up in the last minute, like, "Come on!" The fans just sat there like, "Oh, we've lost it. Oh my god, it's gone in."
What's winning?
That's Barini.
Yeah.
I feel like I remember that very vaguely, but I can't picture it for some reason.
It's just watching it back today. He sort of just gets annoyed that he's in a bad position in the box. He just kicks it as hard as he can. He just goes in.
Not a bad precedent, is it? I suppose. Get annoyed, kick it, and see what happens.
Yeah. And speaking of getting annoyed, this might be the most frustrating game of the season. Maybe West Ham trumps it, but away at Southampton. 0-0 for the vast majority of the game.
Yeah.
Jose Font gets himself sent off with about 10-15 minutes left. Then, with about 5 left, Jermaine Defoe gets Sunderland in front, and you're thinking, right, what a journey as well, like for the travelling fans to go all the way down to Southampton. Cool. You're thinking, a late winner, this is exactly what we need. Give us the boost we need to going into the derby as well, and to keep yourselves out of that relegation zone. But big Virgil van Dijk pops up in the 93rd minute to rifle home, and you've just got to be angry after that sort of thing, haven't you, Cam?
Yeah, I remember I was in Matalan when this happened. Little story. I remember being in Matalan in Pally, just like running around shouting, "Yes, Defoe scored! Defoe scored!" And then I was leaving. The security guard asked me the score. Went 1-0. It's 1-1. Yeah, literally as he asked me, the Van Dijk goal went in. But yeah, I mean, bit of taste really. You'd think obviously if you're scoring that late on, you'd hope to go on to win the game. But ultimately we didn't. I'm sure. Did Sam Allardyce get criticism after this game? I think had he took Kirchhoff off, yes. I think he put O'Shea on. I think he got a bit of criticism for that because it was it might have been a match of the day on Sky or something like that. I just remember him getting criticism over that substitution, but never mind. Point at point, I guess.
Did he go like 3 at the back for the last few minutes or something?
I think so. Yeah, I think he did. Yeah.
And I think. Yeah, it's an odd one when you're 1-0 up away from home, even if you're against 10 men. He's sort of just like, oh no, did he make that change before 1-0?
I'll have a look.
No.
It would be a very strange decision if you're chasing a game still like nils each and you're bringing a defender on, which we've seen Sunderland managers do in the past.
But yeah, 1-1 on the day, a frustrating one, and I just have to apologise, Cam, that you were in Matalan in Pallion because I've been there and it's not a nice place.
He's never been back since, I've heard. Like,
no, I have. I can honestly say I've not a huge fan of Matalan, but never mind.
Or Pallion.
Is this other schools are available, or?
And this leads on a few days after, and I want to talk about arguably the weirdest thing this season. And I didn't realise this had happened, so I want to ask Aaron and Cam, what the expletive happened with Emmanuel Eboué?
Oh, I forgot he played for us, to be honest.
Well,
did he play?
Did he come? Did he play for us?
Because he was there at the 9th of March, and by the end of the March, he was gone.
Yeah.
So
yeah, he was.
Wasn't it something to do with the agent fees or something
yeah,
like that?
was it? Yeah, he wasn't paying his agent fees, and was it UEFA or FIFA, whatever, whichever one that
Banned them,
is?
basically.
They just said, "Nah, you're not playing."
Yeah.
Then he had like, didn't he have?
Oh
He had
wow!
really
Because
bad
he
health
joined on the
after
9th of March, and by the 31st of March, he's gone.
Yeah.
Everyone was like, "Oh right, Emmanuel Buia, like he used to play for Arsenal, like he's a sick player, blah blah blah," and then like he just never made the cut. Never seen him in a kit.
Sums Sunderland up, really, doesn't it?
Yeah.
As a club.
Well, 2 days after Emmanuel Buia joins Sunderland, there is quite a significant signing next door as Rafa Benitez is appointed manager of Newcastle.
Yeah.
And this is just 9 days before the next time we had Derby. And as a Sunderland fan, because like you're neck and neck with Newcastle pretty much throughout the season, when you hear that they've appointed a Champions League winning manager, a Europa League winning manager, like someone who I know James is very fond of, and a lot of us are very fond of, really, on the course. Are you worried at that point as a Sunderland fan? I'll go to Cam for that. Are you worried?
Yeah, obviously big worry. Obviously Sam Allardyce is a great manager at what he does, but he's obviously not the caliber that Rafa Benitez is in. So obviously that's setting alarm bells off, really. But obviously ultimately things didn't quite work out that way. But yeah, as I say,
No, they didn't.
alarm bells were going off at this point in the season.
Yep. And Rafa Benitez's second game in charge, much like Sam Allardyce's, was a tied weird derby. And it's sort of not a reverse because he did it in a draw, but Sunderland were very much in control of this game, and probably should have walked away with 3 points and a 7th straight win over Newcastle. But it wasn't to be with. After Jermaine Defoe put in Sunderland ahead, Alexander Mitrovic would arise at the back post, and him versus DeAndre Yedlin isn't much of an aerial battle, and would nod home to make it 1-1 before he got slide tackled by a Newcastle fan during the celebrations. And that's then. I just want to ask. Oh, is Cam still there?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
All right. It's just his camera's gone off my screen. That's all.
Sorry.
That's all right. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. This is the last time we had Derby that we've seen up to this point.
Yeah.
And how as a Sunderland fan, how much do you miss that, Aaron?
It was either the best or the worst day of the year. Like the best or the worst days of the year for me, to be fair, mate. Obviously, in latter times, it was always the best days of the year. You know, you'd wake up early in the morning and you'd go down the pub and you'd get on it, and obviously you'd hopefully watch the lads absolutely batter Newcastle. And most of the time, it was good crack. But the last time it happened, obviously I was in Tonic. I was saying to you earlier, and there was a fight kicking off in extras, and I turned round and I looked at the screen again, and it was Newcastle 1, Sunderland 1. And I was going, how's that happening? And it's just, it's like Christmas but with no presents. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you get yourself excited and stuff like that, and you're like absolutely buzzing for it and stuff, and then the last second you get an absolute grueler. And I missed the derbies, mate, to be truthfully honest with you. I know a lot of people hated the derbies because if it went bad, it went really bad, and it ruined Christmas as it ruined months for people, you know what I mean? But what is it? I think it's like 9 or 10 in a row or something now. We haven't been beat by them technically, so
Yeah.
we've always got something to laugh about.
Yeah, draw keeps you on good stead as well in there because you're on decent form as it is. A point against Newcastle, a newly Rafa Benitez at Newcastle, and you'd go into the next game against West Brom at home, a 0-0 where again it was a game that you'd drawn that you probably should have won. But I suppose in a sense I don't know if those are more or less frustrating than. Well, no, not frustrating is not the right word, but better to watch than games that you're drawn where you know you probably should have lost, which at the start of the season seemed to be the theme when you did pick up just points. But at this stage of the season, if you draw a game, it's more likely that if there was a team to win it, it would have been Sunderland. And Sunderland's final loss of the season would come on the 10th of April 2016 to eventual champions Leicester City, who done the double, and Vardy was at the double at the Stadium of Light this game with 2 goals. And at this stage, you're 4 points behind Norwich, who are just outside the relegation zone.
Yeah.
And obviously, that's the next game, and we'll talk about that soon. But so leading into that Norwich game, how vital is it that you get a win there, Cam?
So obviously was absolutely massive. Obviously, I believe we did go on to get the win, but I think if things hadn't have gone the way they did on that day, then we could have been looking at a very, very different story. That is absolute 6-pointer, as Aaron was saying earlier. On 6-pointers, it was probably one of our biggest games of the season, really. If we can go and pick up 3 points at Norwich, and then was that have only left us like a point behind them? Was that right?
Yeah, with the game in hand, I think, as well.
Yeah. Obviously, the finish we had to this season, it shows how massive that game was for us, really.
Yeah, and we'll get right into it. A 3-0 win at Carrow Road, so key. And before a goal was scored in that game, there was a massive bust-up. I don't know if any of you can remember why this happened. I feel like there was just I think if I remember rightly, Robbie Brady made like a bit of a rash shove into the dugouts on the touchline. And it just sparked almost like a mass brawl between the 2 benches. And you think, when you're in a relegation 6-pointer, James, how important do you reckon it is to for a fan who's looking around the stands to see that fire in your side, where you think this is the point now where it is about fight and it is about grit and determination to be that team that makes it over the line and stays up? To see that level of commitment that the Sunderland players had, how reassuring is that to you as a fan?
I think it is. I think especially sort of away from home, when obviously you've got if it's around the dugouts as well, obviously you've literally got the fans pretty much on your back as well. So to sort of, as much as obviously you don't want to condone it and say, it's not necessarily the thing you want to see week in, week out, as you say, it sort of shows the players kind of human and stuff, and sort of feeling it as well. It's almost the kind of thing which feels more likely to happen in that kind of game, because everyone's a bit more on edge and works up and kind of knows the stakes. So it is quite reassuring. It sort of, as fans, you can look at it and sort of think, yeah, I'm on the same page as these lads and stuff, and it is just the kind of thing which, as much as it's not great, sort of players can quite like it as well, because it sort of shows that they'll back each other and they'll sort of have each other's backs if they get in a bit of bother, sort of however it might have come about. So it's a strange one, but it can have quite positive impacts, as you say, even though it's not great in isolation.
Words well chosen. And the aggro didn't really stop there, because Fabio Barini converted a penalty in the first half and did his infamous knife in mouth celebration, slid in front of the Norwich fans, and it's one of the least intimidating. Do you know how Raul got a pig's head thrown at him?
Yeah.
Happy clappers don't really quite have the same effect.
No.
They tried.
Sounds or something, then would you?
Yeah. They try. I'm not saying that everyone should go to a game with a disembodied animal.
Yeah. That could maybe be the theme for next season. Obviously, once COVID kicks off, we just go to the butchers and just arm ourselves with just various bits of pig and just launch it from the stands.
I'd say things to throw at an opposition player, probably severed pig's head, cabbage, then happy clappers.
It's not quite as fierce as Emmanuel Adebayor when he was getting all sorts of stuff lobbed at him from
from the Arsenal faithful.
Arsenal fans. Was it 50p pieces and bottles and cans and stuff like that?
Yeah.
At the same ground, didn't Rio Ferdinand get clocked with a coin at the Etihad?
I believe so. Data got caught with a flare at the San Siro. Nuts, man.
Yeah, we'll not condone this.
No,
Yeah,
no,
we
certainly
don't
not.
want to
What- Oh wait, one more. I can't remember what derby it is in Spain. I want it. It's gonna really annoy me. But I watched something about it on Copa 90. A manager got a fan froze a water bottle. So it lobbed it from the stand. It hit the manager on the back of the head and knocked him clean out. I want to say it's, who are Betis rivals with? Because I want to say it's that. It's Betis and Sevilla, I think.
Yeah.
I think it might be that. I might be wrong there. It's definitely a Spanish rivalry. But anyway, off topic. But yeah, 3-0 at Norwich, and it's in the middle of a great run of performances for Jan Kirchhoff, who obviously we talked about being a massive bargain from Bayern Munich, and he's just looking through the BBC reports, he's getting man of the match after man of the match after man of the match in these games, and it just shows that that extra bit of quality in the middle that Sunderland had that season. I think other than the teams around them like Norwich, because you had players like Mbia and Kirchhoff pulling the strings really, and Catamol always good to have in there as well, especially in a relegation battle. And it'd be followed up with a 0-0 draw against Arsenal, which again is a really good result. And I think it showed Allardyce's belief in this squad that after this game, he said he was disappointed because he thinks Sunderland should have won that game. He felt Arsenal were there for the taking, and Arsenal ended up finishing second that season. So that's a statement of how much Sunderland has come on in a short space of time, Aaron.
No, 100%. Couldn't have put it better myself. In all fairness, mate. Miles ahead from where we were at the start of the season. You know what I mean?
And another big moment would come in the following week with a draw away at Stoke City, with a huge moment happening late in the game, where I think Allardyce was furious with the referee during this game. Because I feel like I think there was another one on Kabul actually. There's a blatant foul, and I think Crouch just shoves Kabul in the back. I think if I remember rightly, in the lead up for Stoke's opener, and it's just so blatant, and the referee misses it, and Defoe slots away a penalty in the 94th minute, absolute bedlam in the opposite end. And Newcastle are on great form as well at this time. Try not to forget, because Rafa Benitez really did turn them around towards the end of the season. So it was just about keeping pace and keeping ahead of them when you could. And a loss in this game could have seriously derailed that. But are these sort of moments where you think, okay, it might just be our year?
Yeah, it's definitely one of them where you think it might actually happen. Obviously, one of those things of being a Sunderland fan is we are Sunderland and we have every ability to do a Sunderland. Obviously, it didn't happen like that, but that Defoe goal was so influential, and I think if that hadn't have gone in, if the Norwich result hadn't have happened, we would definitely at this stage be looking at a completely different story.
And well, the story only got sweeter for Sunderland fans in the following game. Is a week later. It's probably weirdly it's the Sunderland game I think I've seen the most in terms of highlights from. 3-2 at home to Chelsea, and I'm just gonna shut up for a minute and let Aaron or Cam, whoever wants to take it and run me through this game, because from a Sunderland fan's perspective, it must have just been dreamland.
Best day of my life, for multiple reasons. To be fair, me band.
For those reasons that can be shared on the pod.
Yeah, sure. Me band played at the fan zone before the game.
Right.
Got to meet Kevin Ball. Got to wear Fabio Brini's shirt. Got to treat like kings. Frankie from Frankie and the Heartstrings looked after us, basically fed us pints all day, fed us food. I think Borough either got promoted or was staying in the Championship that day. I think it was promotion that they actually came.
They did, because they only had one season in the Prem. They came straight back down.
Yeah, they had the early kick-off, I believe. So just after our set finished, we were sitting crowded around this phone because our singer was a Borough fan and we were watching that. Anyways, enough said about that, but we went into the game, got free tickets for the game. But I'd say it's like we're in the concourse or something, but obviously you could see the whole pitch, and I think we went 2-0 down, didn't we? Or it was 1-0 down. 1-0 down.
1-0 and then 2-1 down.
2-1 down, yeah.
1 down. And Diego Costa was getting all sorts of jip as he always does. And then I believe it was Cornea, wasn't it? Was it Cornea?
The equaliser. Jermaine Defoe got the winner.
Yeah, Defoe got the winner. Barini, was it Barini who scored?
Yeah, it was. It was Barini, yeah.
Yeah, because that Defoe goal, it might have been Barini who played the ball in. I can't remember who played the ball in, but Defoe just seemed to just catch it on his foot, one touch, and just a lovely little finish. Was it past Courtois in goal, if I remember rightly?
It was a really good finish. Wabi Kazri scored like one of the goals of the season as well.
Obviously,
earlier in that volley. It was unreal.
Kazri's goal was like it's like a FIFA goal, really. But I think that Defoe goal really summed Defoe up, and just the level of class that he had when he was with us that we've obviously lacked over the past few years. Really, a striker that has the ability to do that. Obviously, with Charlie Wyke and co hanging around the club now. But I said about that better.
And on this day great day, and not just your result. Newcastle that day failed to win at Aston Villa, picking up a 0-0 draw. And shortly after hearing that result, do you feel at that point, Aaron, that we're safe? Obviously, you still need to confirm it, but at that point, do you feel, we've got this?
It was second last game of the season, that wasn't it? Or was it
third last year.
We had Everton and we had Watford. Wasn't really confident about Watford, wasn't really confident about Everton. Obviously, you've got to look at other teams to slip up like Newcastle had and hope that that'd be enough. And then obviously you had to do the justice yourself. But like I say, mate, unpredictability. I didn't know what was going to happen. We could get trounced at Everton. You know what I mean? We'll get trounced at Watford, and you never know what Newcastle are capable with Rafa as manager. So no, I wasn't certain that would done enough. Like,
Cam, I'll let you talk us through this. 4 days later, back at the Sol again. Everton at home. You know, if you win, then you're condemning Newcastle and Norwich to Championship football next season. Talk us through this game.
Oh, it's unbelievable, really. Van Arnold obviously scored first, free kick. Who was it in goal? Who was the Everton keeper at the time?
Is it Robles?
Yeah.
Yes, Robles. That's it. That's him. He had an absolute stinker for the free kick. Obviously, Cornea scored twice, and I remember one of them was just absolute bullet. And the scenes at full time, obviously, Big Sam was given at the big one at the South Stand. It was just unbelievable. Like, that's probably one of my best memories as a Sunderland fan, really. Not a lot of them, especially of recent times. But that game was just incredible. Like, if I could feel how I felt that day as a Sunderland fan, just once over the next couple of years or so, I think I'll be a happy man.
And Aaron, do you have anything to add on your thoughts about that day?
Summed it up perfectly, mate. It was just a massive wave of relief. You know what I mean? We'd done it again. We put ourselves through this season after season after season, but we'd managed to pull it off and stay at the Premier League for another year. But life would be boring if you were winning every game, man. You know what I mean? Yeah. It gives us something to watch, gives us something to complain about, gives us something to celebrate. Who wants to be a City fan? Who wants to be a Sunderland fan?
Yeah. Better than being like a mid-table Premier League team, I guess. Just the likes of
Palace or
something like that. Yeah, just you're not really going to challenge. Might not go down, just existing. Really, that's what it's been about being a Sunderland fan.
Speaking of winning every game, James. So you're looking at this as Sunderland. They've done it again. They've pulled off the escape again with all the survival specialist Sam Allardyce pulling the strings. Looking at it from an outside point of view, you must think, like, obviously it would, but at the time you're thinking, Sunderland are never going to go down.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, and I think a lot of people felt that way, that you wouldn't be surprised to see them start a season pretty poorly, because it felt like they did so consistently for, I don't know, I mean, other Cam and Aaron would know better than me, sort of 3-4 years on the bounce, sort of towards the end of their time a 10-year spell in the Premier League, and then, but normally they'd turn it around, they'd dig themselves out of it sort of one way or another, and almost like Wigan was similar for sort of 2 or 3 years, it felt like.
But Martinez, definitely.
Yeah. So it's one of those where, and I think with the size of the club as well, you kind of think they're also in a position where if they can sort of carry on building sort of what because they generally build something pretty promising in the second half of these seasons, then you felt like they could then sort of start working their way back up towards more like mid-table, and then maybe beyond. Obviously, a lot of it depends on finances and stuff like that. But yeah, and then obviously, unfortunately, next season ended up being the one where I think it's a bit harsh to say luck run out. Obviously, you need a degree of luck in these runs, but you also sort of do them through graft and guts and sort of having the ability to get yourself out of a situation where it would just be easy to cave. So yeah, it's a strange one, but I mean, hopefully, if and when Sunderland do come back up, they'll be in a better, more sort of sustainable position to sort of have an upward trajectory in the Premier League, because I mean, I personally want to see them sort of come back up, and I think most people who sort of are in the city as sort of neutral, so to speak, on the Sunderland front do, just because of the size of the club and how passionate the fans are. Just they're a great addition to sort of the higher levels of English football, really.
Yeah, definitely. Like, no disrespect to like Bournemouth, but like I'd much rather see a Sunderland in the Premier League any other day, like any day. And going into that led into the last game of the season the following weekend away at Watford, and it's probably the only time you could watch a Sunderland game that season with a low blood pressure, I imagine. It's the first time there's nothing really going on.
Yeah, because this is the game all the big staying up, going down videos came out, wasn't it?
Yeah. And Newcastle, it's sort of like bittersweet for Newcastle because they like battered Tottenham.
Oh yeah,
like 5-1. Which sort of, I think that just gave him hope going with Benitez, but still they had Sunderland fans, quite rightly so, in the rear, saying like, "Well, we'd still sent you down, so it doesn't matter." And 2-2 draw at Watford, and appearances for Jordan Pickford again, and George Honeyman came on in this game as well, future Sunderland captain.
Yeah.
Made his first league appearance in this game. And that brings the end to an extraordinary season for Sunderland Football Club, pulling off the Great Escape again. Jermaine Defoe at the forefront, scoring 18 goals in all competitions. Yeah. And it's a horrible question, because I know Sunderland fans will have asked it themselves, so I'll come to both of you. I'll go to Cam first. What happens if Sam Allardyce doesn't take the England job?
Premier League champions. We would definitely still be in the Premier League, so we obviously have Roy Hodgson to blame. But yeah, I think we may have kept him. Got him there. Sam probably would have had something to say about that. Obviously, left half at half time at the Hartlepool game. But it felt like it was worth nothing really, because obviously Big Sam didn't exactly have a long spell as the England manager. So it felt like all of just a big waste of time, really. Obviously, we know who got appointed next and we know what happened next. But I think I would pay a lot of money to have Sam Allardyce back, or have paid a lot of money not to see him go. Yeah,
and I'll come to you, Aaron. Like Cam mentioned on the length of Sam Allardyce's spell. How does that make it worse that like he only got one game, and obviously all this scandal came about third-party ownership of players and stuff, that Sam Allardyce left for nothing, really?
I'm quite sympathetic and apathetic about it, to be fair. Like it was his dream for however many years to finally get the chance to be an England manager, and obviously being club manager, club level in the Premier League for years, decades, you know what I mean? And obviously they've came along and they've offered you your dream, and you're going to attack it, you know what I mean? So it's a shame for him, but at the same time, like, it does seem like a bit of a lost cause and a waste for us, because if we had kept hold of him, then like Cam says, we would have kept hold of Villa maybe, and we might have just like built on like where we left off in that season. Instead, we got stuck with bloody David Moyes, like. But
yeah,
some of that I'll never forgive him for.
Sorry. just looking on BBC Sport now, because I thought it was, we lost Sam Allardyce for one game for England. It was a 95th minute Adam Lallana goal away at Slovakia.
Tense.
It's a depressing prospect, really.
He's got a great record for England, though, Sam Allardyce does.
Yeah, 100%, obviously.
0 goals conceded and all that.
Yeah, 100%.
England were poor that game as well.
Wasn't great.
Really poor.
I'll have him back in the heartbeat, though.
Get sent off.
Oh, yeah.
Not really relevant.
Yeah, I think you're right, James. Yeah. And I did say earlier that I'd mention it. I asked you what the number one was at the start of the transfer window. So let's go for the last game of the season, 2-2 at Watford. 15th of May 2016. I'll go to you first, James. What do you think the UK number one was at that time?
Oh, good heavens. I feel like it was the year before, but I'll go Jess Glynn. No place I'd rather be. Is that
one? It's a shout that, you know.
I feel like that was the year before, though.
Cam, do you want to weigh in with a guess?
Honestly, I have no idea. I'll just go with Plato, I guess. Jess Glynn.
Go on then, Aaron. Can you give us a different answer?
Was it Adele? Something by Adele?
It's a song that, because I heard it so much during this time and during the summer of 2016, I hate it with a passion, and it's One Dance by Drake. And I think that must have been like at the top of the charts for so long.
Yeah.
And I hate that song with a passion.
Don't lie, I've seen you cutting shapes that have played plenty, Harvey.
Definitely have not.
I can't even remember how that to be honest. I'll have to give it a listen when I'm finished.
But you never heard it?
What it's like for some reason.
I'll have heard it, but I just can't remember what it sounds like, to be honest.
Anthem, absolute anthem.
End of secondary school parties, it played like 10 times a night, and it just it's
been one of them, yeah.
But right, a good season in the end, a stressful one, but a good one. Sunderland fans sending the arch rivals down, staying up in the process, and capping it off with two of probably the most famous games in the club's recent history against Chelsea and Everton. And I've had fun looking back on it. Have you guys?
Been a pleasure.
I have, yes. Thank you very much for having me, Harvey.
Oh, you're very welcome. Cam, what have you got anything planned for isolation in the coming days, weeks?
Been playing Call of Duty with Skinny. That's about it, really.
Shave your head again.
Sorry?
Gonna shave your head again?
I might, if it gets long, I might give it a quick once over with the clippers. My dad's just bought some new ones actually, so I might treat you to a haircut later. Are you having a go, Plato? Are you growing?
I might do at some stage. It needs it. It's been out of control for a long old time. So yeah, if I can get my hands on something appropriate to do the job, then yeah, might give it a try. But
hopefully you don't go the Ben route. Shout out to Ben.
Shout out to Ben. You never know. You never know. Well, I'd like to thank all of you lads for joining me today, and everyone for listening to this. It's a very lengthy podcast, went longer than I expected, but when you're looking back on such an eventful season, it's hard to contain it, I suppose. But thank you very much for listening, and we might be back with another season soon. I'll see what comes in the pipeline, probably inside for a few more weeks, so we'll have the time. But yeah, if we do, we'll see you soon.